All right, we are officially live. It is a Tuesday afternoon, and what better way to kick off the week than just talking about one of the topics that I think every early Tesla owner, even sometimes now, Tesla owners are dealing with, and really just as our club is, and even Tesla's mission is, helping the world transition to a sustainable future. Just talking to people potentially that have owned Teslas and own other EVs, and really just talk about a hot topic on what has kind of kept us all from this transition to a sustainable future or to getting an EV, which is range anxiety. And so I wanted to bring in a good friend of mine, Sergio, who has owned a Tesla, owns a Tesla, owns a couple of Ford and other potential EVs, and he's done a lot of cross country travel. He's probably one of the most well traveled people in an EV that I know of. The quick inside story: the first time I met him was at the Scotts Valley Supercharger when they opened it up with the Magic Dock. May that rest in peace, because it was pretty short lived before the transition to the NACS standardization. But I met him there, and we just had a quick conversation, and then it's just funny. I just started seeing this dude all over the place. So I'm really excited to have him on the channel. So let's welcome in Sergio. How's it going, Sergio?
Oh man, it's going pretty great. I can't complain. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for coming on the channel and just talking about, EV range anxiety, and just giving us a little bit of your history. But how about you just like introduce yourself, just talk to us a little bit about, your EV journey, maybe potentially were you even a car guy? Are you still a car guy? Like kind of just give the people that may not know you, just give them a little bit of detail on your background.
Absolutely. So I am an auto enthusiast. I was that kid growing up that had posters of different cars on my wall as I was growing up. I've just always been an enthusiast. So, but it's always been V8s, big muscle, loud pipes. That's been that's how I grew up. I thought that was what was supposed to be what I was supposed to have. And I've owned everything from a Jaguar XKR 5 liter supercharged to a Mercedes Roadster to I even had a Lamborghini at one point, an LP 550. But I I'm frugal. I know it didn't sound that way just now, but I'm frugal, and gas prices in California just started getting out of control. So I decided to sample the EV world, and my first sampling was a 2012 Fisker Karma. So I had a Fisker Karma Echo Chic number 768, which was an early build, and I enjoyed it. I started learning how to just use the EV and not have the generator kick in and figure out how to navigate charging. I mean, it was fun. It was a fun experience, man. And then after I figured out I could do it, I was like, well, let's go full EV. And then I got a 2014 Model S. Then I got a 2017 Hyundai Ioniq with a 28 kilowatt hour battery. Then I got a 2019 Model X 100D. Then I went to a 2020 Model X Performance. Then I got a Kia Niro. Then I got a Ford Mustang Mach-E. And then, it's just been from there. And right now, currently, I have two Ford Mustang Mach-E's. One's a GT Performance. The other one's a first edition. I have a Ford Lightning Platinum Edition. And then I also have a 2023 Tesla Model 3. And I still actually own my Kia Niro, which I don't drive that often, but I still got it.
Well, how has that transition been, man? And so it sounds like, because I got into EVs in 2018. So I'm kind of, from your perspective, new to the block. But what was that transition like? Especially you even, it sounds like bought an EV with 28 kilowatts. I mean, that sounds like the early days of the Nissan Leaf having, 100 miles or something, maybe even less than that. But, talk about, tell me about your journey when you started getting those first EVs. Were you even doing road trips? And then when did it get to a point where you're doing like full blown, like from one state to the next, potentially even doing some cross country trips as well?
Absolutely, great question. So look, so with the 2017 Ionic, it had a EPA range of 124 miles for full charge. My commute was 96 miles one way. And so I literally would take this car from Riverside County all the way down to San Diego. And I would get to work. I would charge it up. It'd take about 3 hours to charge it on the military base, and it would cost me $2.70. And then would finish charging about 3 hours, and I'd leave work later on in the day and commute back home. But that 124 miles, it was like perfect for me because on the way to work, I was able to get about 5 miles per kilowatt hour. So that car was, and it was voted most efficient in 2017, 18, and 19 because it just did the job. So for me, that was my first experience into saying, you know what, let me see how far I can go. How far can I push a car? What can I do with this? And so
Yeah.
um, that was my commuter. Even though some people were like, "You're crazy," like that range was too little. But I used to take that car sometimes from Riverside to San Diego, up to Los Angeles, back to San Diego, and then to Riverside, all in one day. Yes, it was multiple charging stops, but I made it work. I made it first. I mean, it charged pretty decent, and so it was the beginning of testing my luck and what I could do. But my first true experience in long driving, going state to state was with my 2019 Model X 100D. And I drove that from Southern California all the way up to Colorado Springs and back. And then after that, in 2020, I drove it to Georgia, to St. Mary's, Georgia, which is the furthest southeast city in Georgia on the coast, just north of Florida. And drove it towing a 27-foot trailer. So yeah, you talk about like not knowing what to expect and what to do, but that 2017 Model X, I mean, I towed my trailer all the way from California out there, and people thought I was crazy. They're like, "You're not going to be able to make it. This is foolish. Like, you're towing with an EV, this 27 footer." But I was moving out there. I had to move it, and I didn't want to have it shipped any other way. So I loaded it up and I was just like, I checked the charging, all the superchargers. I was like, I could make it. There's not a problem. I made it. I made it. So
Yeah.
I just took my time. I charged at the RV campgrounds every night on with the trailer and with the vehicle as well. And if I wasn't at a supercharger, I was at a campground. Made it to my destination. Since then, I've driven a Ford Lightning and towed my now 37-foot trailer from St. Mary's, Georgia, all the way up here to Monterey, California. And man, it's been an experience. I mean, I drove both of my Mach-E's cross country. I drove my first Lightning from California to Georgia, and then I drove this one back this way. So I've driven up to New York. I just if there's an option where I have enough time to drive, I'm taking the drive. I love driving. I love this. I love the smoothness, the efficiency, the cost factor of having an EV.
Yep.
So that's my way of travel, my preferred route.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. And again, I think it was funny because I think when we met in Scotts Valley, you said you were from Monterey, but then you said you had come from like Sacramento that day or somewhere else, and you were seeing some other spotting some I think were you looking at semis or something, maybe Cybertrucks. But long story short, you are very well traveled on the road. But before we kind of get into like even your Model X drive to Georgia versus your Ford Lightning, in 2018 it's literally 5 years ago, and you drove your Ionic. What was the charging like then? Because it sounds like you were just clearly taking 124-mile range EV to the brink. But like, what was charging like, especially outside of like the Tesla network? What was that like, and how has that morphed into what it is today?
So night and day from 2018 to now, night and day. So what I would do with that one, if my plans were, if I had enough time to be at work and do the road trip, I would leave it on that level 2 charger, which was giving me about 20-25 miles per hour. If I had the time for that. If not, there was an EV Go at the Fashion Valley Mall, which there was only two of them available. So use that one, charged up. I think I was at like at 50 kilowatts for that one. And it was rough, man. There was times where only one of them was working and there was, other cars trying to wait for it. But from where I lived to down in San Diego, it was that one, or there was one in Escondido that I had to stop in, and it was rough. Like I literally had to get on my phone and plan exactly what I was doing every single time. There was no freedom of just jumping in the car and going to like what it is now, like what you're talking about. Like with my Maki, when I decided to drive cross country, I literally said, I'm going to drive, I'm not going to ship it, and punched it into the navigation and followed the route. I couldn't have done that in my Ionic. There was no way that I was going to do that in my Ionic. So yeah, night and day now as far as like the experiences to 2018, 2017.
Yeah, and even then, because obviously you even had a Tesla back then. What was the like? How big of a gap was it? Because I don't even know if Electrify America was really up and a thing back then. But what was the difference at that point, even in 2018, the Tesla network versus like for other EVs?
So there was absolutely more options when it came to the Tesla charging. So with my 2014 Model S, like I had the original San Diego supercharger with, if anybody's from the San Diego area, they know that that station was busy. They actually had a valet guy out there that would, tell you which station to park at. They had signs that they would put up to limit how much charging you could do based on the time of day, how busy it was. And it was a different time. You had those 150 kilowatt chargers that, I mean, even those to now, like the V2s, V3s, it's like the V3s compared to what I used to charge with, it's night and day as well. Because it was either that one, and then there was I used to go up to Cabazon sometime because Cabazon had that new one as well, and that was the 150s, and yeah, it was a little rough because you had to really decide what you were gonna do, and then with a battery that, that of that size, it wasn't as easy to charge it like it was with my Hyundai. My Hyundai was like a few hours, you were good to go. Not with my Tesla. It's like I had to, make sure that I could get enough charge. But um, there was definitely more options. Like I say, if I needed to go further, that's the vehicle I was choosing because I wasn't comfortable with the Ionic just yet.
Yeah, no, I mean, especially 2018, I can only imagine. Again, I got a 2018 Model 3 back then, and I knew even up here in the Silicon Valley area, it was just very sparse. But so thank you for even pioneering some of that because I think it takes people like yourself who even have more of an open mind of like going outside of the Tesla world and just trying other things. And I think I've even experienced that. Like, for example, like I know from my house to get to Kettleman City, I can do it on a full charge, even though sometimes it'll tell me to stop in between. But it takes the experience of it's kind of like your gas car, right? It's the same
Yes.
exact experience, but probably just new because it's EV range versus gas range. But you know where you can go, even if it's telling you you only have 3%, or even if you get to zero, kind of like what that looks like. And as you even could be interesting, we could go down this not necessarily rabbit hole, but as you've noticed from the different brands, Tesla, Ford, Hyundai, like the Ionic, how is the even the battery degradation and range change? But we'll save that because this is about not batteries, and this is about just doing your traveling across. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about what was your experience like traveling in a Model X. Just tell us about a little bit about what that experience was like, and then obviously I want to know what your Ford Lightning experience was like, and then just how those experiences were different, better, pros and cons.
Absolutely. So, I mean, first and foremost, I could tell you with the Model X, I had much more options when it came to which routes I was going to take, who I was going to stop by and visit on my road trip out to, Georgia. Opposed to the Lightning, I was more limited on which route I was going to take as well because, you know, um, there's on the 10 or the 20, you've got much more coverage for the Teslas than you do with, non-Teslas. And so the Tesla, I set out to with my family. We went out, we got the car charged up the night before, hooked up the trailer, and just planned, which RV parks we were going to stay at. We were going to stay at KOAs. We were staying at some of the military bases, some of their fam camps, and just making sure that they had a 50 amp plug so we could plug in the Tesla and charge it as well. And we set off. My biggest fear was leaving California over those hills. I was just like crossing crossing over those mountains in Southern California was like my biggest fear. I was just like, what is it going to do to me with those inclines and this heavy trailer behind me? But when I tell you that that Tesla was just like, I think it was like it was like a maximum of 5,000 pounds towing capacity, and I think the trailer was like at like 51, 52, so a little over what it's rated at, which we know they're very conservative on. But it was like it didn't even care that that trailer was back there. Like I had to catch myself because at one point I was just like, "Ah, I'm just gonna fly up this hill," and then I started noticing that my range started dropping. I was just like, "Yeah, let's not do that." So I had to back it down a little bit because you literally could pass anything you wanted to while still towing, and so it took me a while to adjust to how the vehicle was handling all that weight. I mean, I was driving with a big old parachute behind me, but I was able to navigate, get to each charger, pull up to each charger. I think I can't remember which one it was. Most of the chargers I could just pull up to and plug it up to the Tesla while the trailer was still attached. I think I want to say about 85% of them I just pulled up and charged and I was good to go. Opposed with the Lightning, I had to take it off maybe about I want to say maybe about 40% of the time I was taking off, or pretty close to 50. So because of the way the charging stations were set up. So as far as ease, it was a lot easier. As far as just doing the drive, it was a lot of fun, man. Like I think back to it, my family had a great time. We got a chance to visit other family and friends, and the cool part was with the Tesla, I had the unlimited free supercharging, so it didn't cost me anything
Yeah,
to sit there and
game
supercharge.
changer.
Man, I'm telling you, it was a no-brainer. I mean, I got rid of my towing vehicle, which was a 2017 Suburban LTZ 4x4. Like, I mean, you talk about a gas hog, now towing with the Tesla instead of my Suburban. And I mean, it was a Premier actually, but it was so cool not having to worry about $100 fill ups, like $100 fill ups with just, plug in, charge it up and hit the road.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, thankfully on my P100D, I still have free lifetime supercharging. Obviously, with the Cybertruck coming, I'm going to be sad probably to not be taking advantage of that as much. But you made a couple of interesting comments. Half the superchargers, maybe 40 to 50% of the superchargers, you had to unhitch like what you're towing.
Yeah.
And so I think, when you were, was there a couple of times, like even in your Model X, was there a couple of times potentially where some of the stalls were broken, or for the most part, did you have to like potentially go to another supercharger, or for the most part was it pretty seamless?
I had that happen a couple times. I think maybe to the max, where I would start charging at one of them, but I noticed that the speeds were so low that I was just like, I'm not going to stay here and wait that long when I could just try another one. And then I would just move to the very next one and it would be perfectly fine. But you're talking about maybe two out of, 30 chargers that I had to hit or more. So it's like, it was minimal, but it did happen, a couple times.
Yeah. And then, so obviously with your Ford Lightning, I think, what year is it? And like, how is that, just that experience? Like, 'cause I think it's been probably you've owned it 1 or 2 years now. But
Yeah,
how
it's a
is that?
20,
Yeah,
yeah,
go
it's
ahead.
a 2022. And
Okay.
so yeah, it was kind of cool. Like so I got my first one in June of 22. It was a Lariat edition, really nice. Ordered it, was excited about it, but then I sat in somebody's Platinum edition, and I noticed how much difference the sound system was. I noticed that it had other little features that I really liked, like massaging seats, just the lay flat seats. And I was just like, man, I started having buyer's remorse that I bought a Lariat and not a
Oh
Platinum.
no.
So, so I started hunting for a Platinum, and just so happens that Murray Ford out in Kingsland, Georgia, they had a Lightning Platinum edition that the owner didn't pick up, and so I ended up picking it up in August of 22 at the height of everybody charging just way crazy amounts
Oh
for
no.
MSRP. And I traded in my Lightning for MSRP. So we literally did a MSRP swap, and I ended up getting that Platinum Edition, which, I've had, I think I got like 25,000 miles on it now, and I've
Yeah.
had it since August of 22. So it's like literally, a year old, and I'm just like, I'm just having fun, man.
Yeah.
That truck, it's just so big. But so what I tell people is, it rides like a Lincoln, like a town car. It has the storage space of an SUV, the power of a muscle car like a Mustang, and then it's a truck. So it's like it's your all-in-one, just get whatever you need and get it done. You can cruise if you want to, or you can sit there and go beat some of these muscle cars and show them that that 0 to 60 is, just fun. It's fun.
Yeah. What, so a little bit about your experience. So like obviously you've experienced now you've experienced two road trips pretty much across the US. What kind of led you, like obviously, I think there's a lot of the pros of like owning a Tesla, right? The seamless experience of charging, potentially more of the full self-driving capabilities. But what even led you to other brands, and have kind of that mentality of, I mean, obviously you owned an Ionic OG one in 2018, but like, what kind of led you to go get something else, especially knowing that maybe your charging experience is going to be less than great? But what led you down that road, or was Tesla always kind of just like, this is the best one for now, but I always want to eventually kind of branch out?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and you're gonna probably laugh at me a little bit about this, but so but as far as road trips across the country, I've actually done it, with the Tesla, with the first Mach-E, the second Mach-E, the Lightning, and then I did again with the Lightning. So I've done it 5 times, like coast to coast.
Yeah,
So
that's crazy.
but what led me to it is, so in 2017, Hyundai came out with the Ionic for the US. It was the electric version, and it was limited to only Southern California residents. And so you had to be a California resident. It was like you could only lease it. The lease was like, I think it was like 275 a month. The first 50,000 miles, they were gonna reimburse you for your electrical charging, which they did it per what the average was for kilowatt hour for the state. And then if you kept the vehicle after the lease, you got a lifetime warranty on the batteries and drive unit. Um, all the maintenance was covered for like the first 50,000, up to like the windshield wipers if you needed it. So it was like one of those it was one of those situations where it was just like, all right, 275, I get to drive this car and I get to run as many miles on this as I want. Literally from 2017 to 2019, I put 80,000 miles on that Hyundai Ionic because
That's
I didn't
crazy.
have no limits as far as miles. So literally, if I needed to go someplace, that's the car I was jumping in, because it was just I wasn't worried about it. And there was times where what they would do is they'd give the credit to your lease payment. So there was times I wasn't making a lease payment for months because they were giving me all the credits for all the electrical mileage. So it's like it was pretty cool. That's what made me try something other than the Tesla.
Seriously.
It was, I'm
Yeah.
frugal, so it'll make sense now. But then when I decided about when Ford announced the Ford Mustang back in 2019, it was September of 2019. I was just like, they announced it, and I've always been a Ford Mustang fan. Like one of my top cars was an '89 Ford Mustang GT convertible, 5 liter, and I ended up. I mean, since then I've owned probably like 8 Mustangs, and so I I was like, it's electric. Like I'm now into the electric vehicles. They're gonna come out with a Mustang. I've already had 8 Mustangs in my life. I'm ready. I need a Mustang. I want an electric Mustang. I want them,
Yeah.
electric. Because I've always said I'm not buying anything else gas. Like once I got to full blown electric vehicles, even when I had an F-250 as well, and like when I totaled my F-250, I wouldn't replace my truck because I was like, I'm not buying another gas car or truck. And so I was like, whoever gives me an electric truck first is going to get my money, because I'm sold on electric. I'm not going to have a gas vehicle in my driveway. Um, so when Ford did the Mustang, I was like, give it to me. And then they came out with the first edition, premiums and the select first, and I was just like, okay, cool. You know, it was fun. I was like, I need more performance. I need more power. Then they came out with the GT Performance. I was just like, man, now I got to buy another one because I need more
Oh
speed.
my
So,
gosh.
so
I did
then
the
they
sa-
came,
I did the same thing. I bought a rear-wheel drive Model 3 and then they announced the performance. So I get what you're
yeah.
saying.
So it's like they know what they're doing to us.
Oh my
They
god.
know who their market is. So it's like they pulled me into it. So I bought the GT Performance. I'm just like, and then I couldn't get rid of the first edition because it's the first edition. So I'm like, now I got two. But it's
Yeah.
like, you know, I both of them have so many, like, they're different characteristics, and so it's like one's great for cruising, hanging around, you know, just comfortable. The GT Performance is just, it's for having a good time, man. Like, I literally can take that car and go do slaloms and 0 to 60 drags and just have a ball, and then go home and be like, that was fun, you know. So,
Yeah.
um, and then the Kia was on sale, so I bought that one when it was on sale. It was like, if something's on sale that makes sense, you know, I'm terrible,
Do it.
man. It's like, you know, people collect shoes and purses, and I'm like, I collect cars.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. What would you say, like, so you've been in the Tesla community, you've been in the Ford community, Ionic, it sounds like you even own a Kia. What are the concerns? Because I think in the Tesla world, again, there's just charging isn't necessarily the like a big concern unless you're doing your
Right.
first road trip, which I want to get into next. But what's the top of mind for other owners that are looking, like non-Tesla owners? What's top of mind when they're doing road trips?
Definitely the charging infrastructure. I mean, if you've got a non-Tesla, you you have to consider what's going to happen when you get out there. You're going to have that range anxiety. You're going to think to yourself, like, because you know that the Tesla superchargers out there, you see those red chargers when you're driving, you hear about it, you know the Teslas have like the charger network. So when it comes to the others, unless you do more research and you take your time, then you can find out whether or not it can work and fit for your life. Not every EV is going to fit every owner. And so it's like you have to figure out where you live, where you at, what do you plan on doing, and then figure out like, can I make this work? I mean, that Hyundai Ioniq, if you were in, you know, one of the Dakotas, it probably wouldn't work for you. But if you're in like a metropolitan area and you're going to be around there and just going to commute, it probably be perfectly fine for you. I mean, the Leaf would probably be fine for you. But if you're going to be, you know, hitting the road and doing road, you know, you got to consider all those, you know, variables as far as charging networks and where you're going to be able to find. And so, um, that's the biggest difference as far as like which one is going to provide me the best access to be able to do what I need to do.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have two questions for you. So just because otherwise I'm gonna forget. So the first one is more of like, you've been in several other EVs, again, non-Teslas. Which ones are the best ones as far as like range goes? And then two, what would you tell, I think, a person who is preparing for their first road trip? Because we get this question all the time in our forums, in our Slack channel. But how would you prepare them for their first road trip?
Got it. So the first thing I do whenever I'm considering a road trip, and regardless of which vehicle I'm driving, well, I can't really say that because with the Tesla, I don't do it anymore. If I'm, because I was going to say, like, normally what I do is I get on PlugShare, and you know, that's a user-based reporting where folks are checking in, they're telling you whether the chargers are working. You know, I used to do it with the Tesla back in what, 2017, 2016, when I had the Model S, but I don't need to do that anymore because I know if I go to a Tesla charger, if the car is telling me to go there, the systems are linked much better, so it knows exactly what's going on. Um, Before any road trip for any EV owner, I'm the type that's like, get on PlugShare, get on PlugShare, get on PlugShare. Look at what's going on. Check all the chargers. If the car is telling you to stop at X, Y, Z, pull up X, Y, Z and see, hey, what's going on there? Are all the chargers working? If they're not all working, you know, plan a little bit, give yourself more buffer. Um, if there's issues at one and you're like, okay, only one's working, maybe try to skip that one. Maybe stop earlier than what it's telling you to do, and shift your plans around a little bit. But just take your time and make sure that they're working, because you can run into a situation where you're going to a station where only one or two are working, and now that station is crowded and backed up. But if you do your due diligence, you might find a charger that's like, I could tell you the Paso Robles location, it would be considered Northern California, is one where it gets pretty busy. But if you go 15 miles south, there's another charging station, and it's rarely used as much as Paso Robles. So folks that are coming from the south, they'll pass up that charger to maximize their distance, go hit Paso Robles, and then now they're stuck waiting because there might be two chargers working for Electrify America. And then instead of, if they would have planned accordingly, they could have just stopped at the first one where everything was working. All the chargers are working. And so just plan, just, take a look at what's going on, see what users are saying, and then hit the road. Don't just jump on the road. I could tell you for Ford, a little insight on that is Ford has started to work on live updates as well for your vehicle to tell you whether or not which chargers, how many are available before you even get there. So there is some stuff coming out where you're gonna be able to have some access and not just pull up to a station and not know like how many are working. So um, it's in the testing phase right now, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it's I think in the test world we can be a little spoiled, but
Yes.
as we all know, really it's going to take a village to just make this happen. So what would you say to potentially people that are still on the fence about doing, maybe they have two cars, one's a gas, one's an EV. What would you say, like, you know, potentially words of wisdom that you would give them to kind of get them over that hump to just kind of go? Because it's even for myself, like sometimes when we'll go down south, there's been times where let's say it's just my wife going, and she's potentially taking all four young ones, and so for sometimes it makes more sense to actually take like our gas car if I'm not able to go with her. But a lot of times she still will take the Tesla. But there's still a little bit of that uncertainty, even for a Tesla, because again, she's drives my Tesla all around locally. But she's not used to that road tripping. So I think there's that natural, like, hey, it just feels more comfortable to stop 2 minutes at a gas station, but versus like getting very comfortable with that. So I think it's like, because we all know EV adoption, again, it's going to take all of us. And like you're a perfect example of, someone who has been on both sides and is still, you actually have both, right? You have a Tesla, you have a bunch of Fords. Um, uh, it sounds like a Kia as well. So it's just like, you've done it, but it's just more of like, there's still just people, even it's 2023 and we're still, people still think that EVs catch on fire, or there's still range anxiety.
Great, man. So you touched on a bunch of points that are conversations that it's a tough one to have with people, because you want people to be comfortable. You want to make them, do things in time where it works for them. So even for myself, after I took the plunge into EVs, I held on to my Audi. I had an Audi A6, and the funny thing about this Audi is I wasn't driving it no more, because I would drive my EVs before I would drive the Audi. I kept the Audi for when visitors came in. It was like a 2014 A6, and I just kept it. I was like, "Hey guys, like if you needed to drive something, drive this," because not everybody was comfortable with an EV. But I also kept it because in my back of my mind, I was just like, if I need to run someplace really fast and do something, I have this gas car, I could get there faster. I could, I have the freedom to do this or that, and not just want to be solely dependent on electric. And so not until I think it was 2021, I decided finally, like, you know what? I only put 200 miles on my Audi, and it wasn't even me that put the 200 miles on it in like the whole year. And then I had to buy tires for it because it got flat spots. And then I was just like, I'm letting this car decay in front of my house because I don't want to drive it. Like, I love the car, I just don't want to drive it because, I don't want to drive gas. I don't want to put gas in it. I don't want to take it in for the Audi maintenance. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. And finally, I told myself, you know what? Cut the dependency, get rid of it, move on, because anywhere that I've gone, anything that I've done, I'm able to do in my EVs. I have driven, like I said, coast to coast. I've got over 500,000 miles in EV miles, like locked in. So when it comes to,
That's
can you
crazy.
go here? Can you do this? Yeah, you can. But
Yeah.
all it takes is that little bit more patience, that little bit more planning to say, you know what, I'm going to make sure that, I give myself, if I need to do something, or just make sure your cars are charged up. Make sure that if you're concerned about, like, oh, what if my family needs me and I need to jump in the car and go, you know, just keep your car topped off. Just, keep it to the 80%, keep it to the 85, 90%. If you have the LFP, keep it to 100%. I mean, you could do what works for you to make you feel comfortable that you have it, because it's the same thing. Like, people would be like, oh, well, your dependency, what if the power goes out? And that's one of the ones where I'm always having the conversation. Well, if the power goes out and you only have like an eighth worth of gas, you can't go to the gas station because it takes electricity to pump that gas. Or you can't pay for your gas, buddy, because the electric, machines, or the button they need to push to activate the pump isn't going to work. So how are you going to get gas? And they're like, oh, they have manual. No, they don't have manual. Unless you're going to grab a hose and try to stick it down the tank and try, that's not going to work. So
Yeah.
it's like, people have this mindset, and it's just like, well, the difference is, though, and this is a pretty cool one, is like when we lived in Southern California, we had solar, and we actually had a receptacle that was in the garage. And if the power went out, that receptacle would become live, and then I could still charge. So if the power was out, I was still able to charge my car and still get, the mode of, some whatever the electricity that I needed. Opposed to, if I had a gas vehicle, I wouldn't have had nothing. I can't make my own gas. But it's like, you have a lot of the solar chargers that are out now, like Beam has out. I know ChargePoint has a couple of solar powered chargers out there. And I mean, so there's options. And so it's like, the fear of, like, oh, if this happens or that happens. If it happens, it happens. Like, people are like,
Yeah.
oh, what happens if there's going to be a blizzard? Well, I'm sorry. Even if I had a gas car, I'm not going out there because I don't want to, like,
Yeah.
there's nothing out there for me. So, you know, there's always the what ifs, but it you can do it. I mean, we've all had cars starting off with, small ranges. I mean, I had a Corolla at one point in my life that I could go here and go there, and then I've had, like, other cars like my Mustangs that were like, gas hogs that I would just, because I modified them, and it's just like, you you you're limiting yourself by what you want to limit yourself by. So just realize that there are cars, like, you have Teslas that can go 300 and some odd miles. You have Teslas, you have other EVs that can go 300, 400 miles. You have options. And quite honestly, even with myself, like, I'm comfortable with an EV that does about 300 miles because I want to get out, I want to stretch, I want to, like, take a break. I don't want to just do nonstop continuous. I mean, you can't do nonstop anyway in a gas car, but it's like, you have to get out and stretch. Otherwise, you're gonna, like, get there and you're gonna be in pain because you sat there and, just did all that driving. And
Yep.
nah, I'm cool with the way it is, man. I take your time, decide what works for you, but don't sit there and limit yourself, because you could find an electric vehicle now in 2023 that can do the same thing as your gas car.
Yeah. No, what would you say specifically, like, cuz you have experience with towing. How has towing impacted your range? Again, you've done a Model X, you've done the Ford, like, so people that are going to potentially add trailers on, they're doing like kind of the family camping maybe, or they're throwing on the teardrop trailers. Like, what experience or knowledge do you think that can be valuable for them?
So as far as the towing experience, I mean, with the Tesla or the Lightning, it all comes down to the same thing too. It's like, check to see where your chargers are going to be at, what locations are going to be at. If you can pull up, the photos of it, size up your location, because you're dragging a trailer. Are you going to, pull in and be blocking the entryway, the thoroughfare? Are you going to, need to unhitch? Where are you going to park it? Like, just do your due diligence, making sure that you could be safe. But is it impossible? I could tell you no. I did a 37-foot trailer with that Lightning, and I did a 27-foot trailer with that Tesla. And, you know, although I had to unhitch here and there, it's like I would park it, in parking spots or in a dirt lot or wherever it was where I can keep a visual on it because I didn't want nobody to think it was abandoned or somebody to go mess with it. But I would keep it to in eyesight and so I could reach it if needed. But I'd unhook, charge, hook back up, and go. And I mean, a lot of these newer trailers now, or you could even add it, have electric jacks, so it doesn't take that long to unhitch. Like it's literally a couple minutes to just push the button, let it drop, unhook it, and go charge. And so, one thing I will say though, was pretty cool with the Lightning is while I was charging that Electrify America, or I think I used Electrify America the whole trip, I was able to plug up the truck and have it charging, and plug up the trailer to the truck and use the electricity, turn on the air conditioner and all the amenities in the trailer while it was physically charging because of that outlet that it has in the back. So that was a game changer for me because it was just like I didn't have to, go inside the vehicle and wait. Like I could literally be hanging out in the trailer comfortably while the truck was charging.
Yeah. How did the towing of it impact your range? Obviously, so probably with because I've never had to tow anything personally, other than like a bike rack, but again, no towing. But like, how does that impact the range? Like, were you ever in a situation where it was saying, "Hey, I can make it here," and let's say all of the flags, or there's no flags for stopping somewhere, but did you ever get super close to? Because I think does it
Oh yeah.
take 15 to 20% off the battery, or like, how has the range been impacted?
So that truly depends on what you were towing. I could tell you that there isn't an equation that I could give you, a formula that I could give you that is the say all. But with my Tesla Model X, I could tell you I towed a car dolly and had a Honda Accord back there that I towed, and the impact was minimal. I think I maybe about 15-20% impact. Um, I towed a couple dump trailers that little to no impact on there. But with that 27-foot trailer, 5,200 pounds, it did impact about 50% of what the Model X could do. And that was, I was running the 20-inch wheels, and that's also 55 miles per hour, 60 miles per hour on highway. And, California is 55 max anyways. So before those people start jumping on me saying I'm going too slow, 55 is California. They do not like you going faster than 55 while towing. That is the law. Anyways, but and that's how I was taught. But so about 50%, and the same with the Lightning. So my Lightning is rated at, 300, and I was about 140, 145 max that I could do while towing that 37-foot, 9,000-pound trailer. So maxing them out, yes, it was, I'm at 50%. But even when I towed my Mach-E with my Lightning, when my Mach-E is 5,000 pounds, I was able to get, I drove 120 miles and used 60% of my charge. So it was like, it wasn't even that. Is it always going to be 50%? No, it's also going to depend on speed. It's going to depend on how flat is that thing behind you. If you get that teardrop like you're talking about, like there's a lot of different factors go into place. What kind of inclines are you going to be taking? But there was times when I was towing that 9,000-pound trailer and I was getting like 1.3 miles per kilowatt hour, and there was times where I was getting zero point 0.9. But overall, the average was 1.1. So it's like it just depends on where you're going, what you're doing, and how fast you're doing it.
Yeah, no, makes sense. So we have this actually probably going to be a familiar face, but we have a question from the audience. Travel Tesla Dad question for Sergio. Because of all the road trips you've done, how many roadside assistant calls have you had due to a flat tire or battery issue? What do you say to people wanting to road trip and no spare tire?
Man, awesome question, Tesla Travel Dad. So look, Travel Tesla Dad, that is man, I'm telling you, that's a great question. So with my Model X, this is what I did. I bought a little air compressor off of Amazon. I bought a tire repair kit from Amazon, and that's what I used. I could tell you that when I was going through Texas, I did pick up a nail. I had a tire light come on telling me that my back tire was low. I pulled into a supercharger, plugged up the car, figured out, where the screw was in my tire, pulled it out while it was charging, plugged it, and aired it back up, and I was on the road again by the time the car was done charging. So that was like the only issue that I had with the Tesla. No battery, no towing, no none of that. With the Lightning, no issues as all with that as well. So it's like as far as it goes, it's almost like it's gonna be like any other vehicle that you have out there. It's like as long as you plan accordingly, you'll be able to be fine. So gas car, if you're pushing it to zero, there was times where I would pull into a charger and I was at like 2%, 1%. But like you mentioned earlier, I know my vehicles because I've tested them. I know like how to, slow it down even more if I'm starting to like get close to that number that I might not be able to reach the charger. But as far as having to have my trailer towed or any of that stuff, I didn't have that situation because I just made sure I took my time. Speed is not your friend when you're towing, and especially if you're towing with an EV, it's not your friend. So it's all about just taking your time and making sure that you're being mindful of what you got. But yeah, definitely take a little kit, prepare yourself. I mean, it literally took me no time to fix that tire on the Tesla when I ran over that screw, and I was back on the road before I was done charging.
Yeah. No, I did have a battery issue where actually my battery literally just my Model X just completely bricked. Where I was pretty much just driving and the battery completely went dead, and thankfully I was able to call Tesla roadside service. But for some reason the car, and I don't recommend this to everybody, but the car, like I walked away for 3 minutes, came back, and the car was working, and I was able to actually make it to the Tesla service center. But obviously a lot of it could depend too on um, being able to connect to Tesla roadside service, or again, potentially the other EVs having their roadside. But having that spare tire, shout out to Modern Spare. I mean, having an extra backup, or tire pressure thing you were saying, I think those are all just small hacks. Even having potentially even a portable battery that could potentially even charge your EV for that emergency, like 1 or 2 miles, whatever it may be. Obviously not while you're towing, but because that's not going to work.
Right.
But those couple of things will just completely just remove the edge of just being stranded, right?
But I
So
could I also to chime in like what you mentioned about being brick like that. I did have that experience once in my Mach-E GT where I was on a road trip to New York, and I just finished charging and I was leaving the charger and it just decided to throw all these little dummy lights at me and was really upset about whatever was going on in its life. And it happened in, I can't remember the name of the town in South Carolina, but happened in South Carolina, Walterboro or something like that, South Carolina. The cool part about that experience, and I know that it doesn't sound like a cool experience, but you mentioned, calling for assistance, and I've had Tesla, troubleshoot my vehicle over the phone and, send some firmware updates and do the EVs are so cool when it comes to this. So what happened with my car is all these dummy lights came on. It just was acting gutless, and I found the local dealership. My friend Bob helped me find it, and it was like a mile and a half away from the charger. And I drove over. I limped over to the dealership, and I was like, "Hey, I'm on a road trip to New York. I don't know what happened to my car." They plugged it up, and they figured out there was some kind of confusing codes that contradicted each other, and the car just decided to be foolish. But less than 45 minutes, I was back on the road, and the car was acting like nothing ever happened. So that's one thing I could say about EVs. It's like, you know, has changed my mind when it comes to problems or issues. Like I've had it with the Tesla where I can call and they could remote send codes, or I could pull in and they could flash something really quick and I'm back on the road. Opposed to a gas vehicle where you have some kind of weird hiccup,
exactly.
and they got to actually go change some physical part in order to get you back on the road. I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't had that experience with my electric car yet. And
Yeah.
I'm let me knock on wood, but I have not had that.
Yeah. No, I mean, even in the Kettleman City, there's it's like the one place with the in and out really from I would say the Bay Area to the top of what is it, Tejon Pass. It's like the only in and out. But long story short, I've seen, as I've even pulled off, to come and charge in the Tesla supercharger, there's like a couple of like places to kind of like fix your gas car and get help there. But it's the same situation. Like, you're going to still have to call the, roadside assistance. I think even with your EV, depending on, again, where you are, at least because it is a computer, it can spit out what's wrong and give the, but obviously, as even with Tesla, right, as they grow out with having more service centers, there's just going to be more access to being able to take it to a couple of places. And as we transition to EVs, like hopefully more of those smaller automotive businesses will transition into being able to fix EVs, troubleshoot. I still think that's going to be a gap for a minute, because otherwise you kind of are just left to taking it to Tesla service, Ford service, because they know what they're doing, especially with all of the electronics.
Yeah, it's gonna. I mean, it's gonna catch on. I know we have like over there in there's a EV repair facility as well. That's like, and they do a lot of retrofitting. But you can also take your EV in there if you had any issues, whether it's a Tesla, Ford, or whatever, Leaf. They'll fix it for you. But no, you're right. As these contracts are adopted and more folks start working on EVs. I mean, it's here. It's not going anywhere. Like whether folks want to accept it, EVs are here, and
Yeah.
it's only going to continue to expand.
Yeah. No, for sure. But Sergio, I just want to say thank you for coming on the channel, for just dropping your knowledge, for being a friend to me, to the club, and just being inclusive, because I think that's been some of the coolest stuff, right? Is that even in this world that we're in, with all of us trying to, buy EVs, whether it's a Tesla or non-Tesla, it's just like it takes all of us to share our experiences. And I thought that's why it was important to have you today, is because you have both experiences and knowledge, even to the point where you were literally running one of the, your Ionic into the ground. Because again, for myself, like I said, I know that even if my Tesla tells me that I can't make it from point A to point B, if I've done it before, I know I can push it. But a lot of it just comes, some of the words I would say probably, recommunicating from you, it just takes experience. It's like with your gas car, when that orange sign comes on, how many more miles you have, 10, 15, 20, and you start to slow down, or, you put up your windows, or you throw down your windows and turn off the AC.
Yep.
I've been in those situations where I'm like 2 or 3 miles away, and I'm like, hey babe, like it's like freezing outside. Like, we got to turn off the heated seat. Like, this is,
Yes.
we've been through, some snowstorms and other stuff through Tahoe. So, yeah. So thank you for all of your wisdom. And I'm really glad that, we could share your wisdom with, our audience. So make sure to give Sergio a follow. He's tagged on X. And then also too, same thing with YouTube. His channel is in the description. But yeah, hopefully you all can meet him at one of our meetups. He really showed up big at the Tesla takeover this past year. I believe didn't you bring 2 cars? I think you
Yeah.
brought 2 or 3. I don't know. I've lost count, but
We showed up deep. We showed up deep.
yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, so thank you for bringing your two cars to the EV showcase. But yeah, Sergio's around. He's in the EV community, especially if you're in the California area. So again, make sure to give him a follow. And thank you everyone for tuning in today.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.